everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Firehouse Chronicles, where we document history. I'm your host, Joyce Costigan, and our guest today is Chief Bill Wade, who talked to us about his days in the Oceanside Fire Department as a member of Southside Hose Co, sharing the good times, the sad times, and the funny times in between while we capture the history of OFD through Chief Wade during the late 70s through the 80s and 90s. So with that, here we go. Hey, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Joyce Costigan, and I'm here with Willie Costigan. And sitting in for the first time is our son, John, from Salamander Hook, Ladder, and Bucket Company. On this episode, we are here with our special guest, Chief Bill Wade, who is a current member of and chief of the Point Lookout Lido Fire Department, as well as a member of Southside Hose Company in Oceanside, which is what brings us together today. A warm welcome to you, Chief. And thank you for joining us on the Firehouse Chronicles, where we document history. Boy, fire service is definitely in your blood.
Oh, yeah. Since I was about, I think I got hooked at the age of like 8 or 9 or 10, somewhere around there.
Really? Yeah. Watching fire trucks on a parade?
No, my brother was in the Rockville Center Fire Department. And then, as young kids, we were brought there and everything. So we were introduced to that environment when, at a very age. And I just never got over the excitement of being part of the firehouse. I saw the camaraderie between the guys, the excitement of them all jumping on the truck and out the door and everything.
Being that young, and it stuck with you?
Oh, yeah.
Back then?
Yeah, yep.
And then when did you come to Oceanside?
I moved to Oceanside the middle of 1979, just as I was about to graduate high school. We moved to Oceanside, so it was 1979.
So you were already 18 by then? Or?
Yeah.
And then what happened immediately?
No, neither one of us. Steve and I were interested in joining the fire department, but we didn't do it. We joined the Knights of Columbus, got involved in that, and then Steve actually joined the fire department first. He was in there for about 6 or 8 months before I went down.
He joined Southside?
Yeah, he joined in. It would be 1982, the end of 82, and then I came along and led the middle of 1983. I got voted into Southside in September of 1983.
Was it everything you thought it would be?
Oh yeah, obviously Willie remembers. The discipline was there, which is what I really appreciated. If we went out and had a good time with these guys, on a Saturday night or a Friday night or whatever, but come Sunday morning, it was 9 o'clock. You had to be at the firehouse, regardless of what happened the night before. And I remember that Gary Bedell, one of the captains back then, the officers, he would actually show up at my house, and he was one of the people who went out with me the night before.
What, show up? Where are you?
Yes.
Why aren't you?
Oh, yep.
So they came and got you.
Yes, they came and got you. So I look back on that, and I'm grateful for all of that. To instill that. Hey, listen, don't mess this up. I'm grateful for all of it.
Sure.
Oh,
sure. Boy.
Who's the officers when you joined?
Let's see. It was Charlie Bedell, Gary Bedell, and I think it was Eddie Sharpberg.
Okay.
Yeah,
good guys. What about, and who was the chief? Do you remember who the chief of the department was?
It was... Billy Telford was the chief.
Okay.
Billy Telford was the chief. Jimmy Conklin was in the line. Bob Rochon, another great guy.
Yeah.
And then that year was the election for the baby chief, and as it turned out, it was Richie ran against your brother.
Oh, right.
And your brother got in.
Okay.
Because I think your brother was captain, went right from captain to chief.
Yeah, he was like 26 or 27 years old.
Yeah, he was pretty young.
Yeah.
At the time. So, and then Brochon had to get out because he was moving east.
Yeah, right. And he went halfway, and then he jumped out.
Yeah, and then Paul Napoli took his spot.
Right.
But it was it was a good group. Brochon I missed because he made an immediate impact on me.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
And to this day, I still, I don't greet him with a handshake. I always give him a hug.
Yeah,
when I see him.
Let me talk about Southside as long lines over there. Tell me some of the guys you knew from Southside. And go back.
I didn't know any of the Bedells. I knew my brother, and I think I maybe knew Gary Bedell.
Yeah.
Were they the founders of Southside?
The Bedell family and the Abrams. They were the
They were the dynasty.
Oh yeah, it was a family thing.
Yeah.
And they all lived within like a couple of 100 feet of the firehouse.
Yeah, and that compound.
Yeah. Yep.
So let me ask you, who do you remember? Who's the oldest guys you remember?
The oldest guy I remember was Al Tyre Sr.
Okay.
He's an ex-chief. I'd seen pictures on the wall of him, and he was a tall, robust man. And he developed arthritis or the back arterial
Sclerosis?
No, yeah, and he wound up when he passed away right after I joined. He was like 5'5" or something. He had shrunk that much.
Oh, wow.
But
Oh,
him, Smitty.
Smitty,
Yeah, he was one of the older guys. Axel Wilson was
Right,
this
right,
old
right,
Swede
right,
guy.
right,
Just
right.
they were characters.
Right.
Every one of them were characters in their own right.
Right.
But
Exactly.
I mean, they were influences on us. They helped the officers back, the strictness and the discipline and everything.
One of the things, and talking to Chief Jacoby and Freddie Robinson and Tommy Pellegrino was back in the day. You went to every firehouse,
Right.
you wherever you, if you were by Terrace, you went to that firehouse.
Well, I can say that we palled around with, there was camaraderie and there was also competition between the companies.
Sure.
But the competition never went as far as the camaraderie.
Right.
Because we could argue amongst ourselves, and then on a Saturday night when it came to parade time,
Right.
we were all in. Everybody was on the same page, and there was nothing, and that I used to love that.
Right, but you remember, you could come down to the rescue and
Always.
sit down.
Right.
Tuesday night, let's watch the Islander game or something.
Yes.
And then, hey, Friday night, let's go over to Southside, and everybody would be there.
Right.
Every company would be in the house.
Yeah, Sundays, up at Foxhurst Road, Friday nights or Saturday nights at Rescue.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
It's a little different now.
It is. It's a lot different now.
Yeah.
But the only thing is that all of us, you guys included, I mean, I still have lifelong friends from all of that.
Right.
And not only from Oceanside, but from Baldwin and Freeport and Island Park.
Right.
And we all go back decades now with these people.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's so much fun to say, hey, listen, I still get the enjoyment of greeting these guys. After,
But you remember, we go to the parades, and again, like you got Terrace and you got Rescue and you got Southside, and then you go to the parade, and it would be Peter Stroll against Cowboy from Freeport.
Yes. Yep.
All right, now all the Oceanside guys are together.
Yeah, because between the battalion and say the county and the South Shore or something like that, we actually, I think the numbers are right even. In other words, I think we pretty much between us and Freeport, we won probably 50% of the parades that we went to outside the battalion, and even within the battalion, nobody outside of Freeport or Oceanside has ever won the battalion.
Right.
Nobody.
Right.
Right, but you remember we go to parade and 244. You'd have 18 guys standing up on the deck up there going to the parade.
Right.
All the old guys were on there, and the parades were a big thing.
Yeah,
right?
because we used to draw 150 guys
Right.
to a parade.
Right, those were big deals.
And I tell people like there's younger guys now, and I talk about, I don't know if you remember it, but the chair, because we used to have early on we had a chair, not unlike anything here, and they would measure your hair before the parade.
Oh, yes.
And if your hair was too long, you'd had to get in that chair, and you would get a haircut.
Yes.
I said
yeah.
Louis Calinado used to be there with scissors cutting people's hair in front of the
No
headquarters.
lie. That actually was a true story.
But I have to say, it never applied to the girls.
No,
Because
no.
I told Chief Stroll,
Yeah,
you're not cutting my hair.
Because your hair was down to
Down to
your
my
waist.
butt.
Yeah.
And then they had Bob Brocker's kid would be there with the shoe shine kit.
Right.
All the firemen lined up
Yes.
getting their shoes shined.
Because the mentality was, hey, listen, don't give us a hard time about you not being ready because all the rest of us are ready. We didn't come out here to lose this, just to have you act. It looked disheveled.
Right.
No way.
Right.
And then I remember looking at the color guard, and I always wanted to be a part of that. And it was at the time back then, it was real hard
Right.
to get into the color guard.
Right.
You know, so I went up to Salamander, Harry
Springer. Yeah.
and he had left shortly after that. So it was. I'm trying to remember who was in charge of the color guard at that time.
Yeah. Well, Steve Klein was up there.
Right.
Harvey Husser was on one side.
So anyway, I went to them and I said, "Listen, I want to, join the color guard." And this was only like a year into the department, 2 years. And they said, "Listen, you have to
You grow a foot.
right." Yeah. Well, the one thing is that I had to. They went to Red Robinson, and they said, "This guy, does he ever get out of step? Do you have to pull him out? Because if you out of step, you're
done.
you're done." Right. And so, and then the other thing was, I had to. I was given in the middle of the winter, that 1 year before I got into color guard. I was handed a pamphlet on flag etiquette. You had to know the whole thing. You had to know how a flag was carried, how it was put on a casket, how it goes in display in a meeting room, everything. To this day, I can cite you the entire flag etiquette because it was drilled into me in Oceanside, and you had to know it. So
it was definitely a different, because back in the day, Harry Springer, Peter Stroll, Tommy Mundinger,
right,
all guys 6
Charlie
foot
Ward.
2, 6
Right.
foot 3,
Yes.
up there. They were all big
Chris
guys.
Andos was in
Chris
there
Andos,
right before he became an officer.
Right.
So I got in.
Jim Garvey's another
Right.
one.
All top guys.
Yeah.
And then, and then I got in, and then for a period of, oh my God, I have to say it was like 6 or 8 years. There was a period of where me, Donnie Jackson, Jonesy, Steve Kramer, myself, Kevin Holdabler, another name, but there was like 12 or 13 of us who were the color guard that entire time. Like we saw each other every Saturday for years.
Right.
Right.
And we didn't make a mistake. And it was told to us early on that it's never about the members of the color guard. It's about the flag. It's always about the
Rightfully
flag.
so. Yeah.
And I never forgot that. That was, that
But
was.
did you
Absolutely.
think amongst the other, like, Oceanside really stood out among the battalion, amongst the other fire departments? Not that there's anything against the other
Right.
fire departments, that they were all fine and dandy in the parades as well. But you just felt like, we got it together a little,
Well,
little more.
Freeport will come around the corner with their 12 flags.
Right. They sometimes had 15 flags, but we marched in a different format than they did because they marched so closely that they could never let the flags fly. And we spaced ourselves out so that between the rows was the distance of the flag. So we used to, between row 1 and row 2, we would space them out and then open the flag, and that's where row 2 stood.
See, it's not the quantity, it's the quality.
Right. And so we always marched like that so
Right.
that when there was a breeze, all of the flags would fly. And again, it was about the flags. It was never about us.
How long did you serve on the color guard?
Almost my entire time in the fire department.
Really?
I mean, even when I was an officer, they like, you're a captain now. You can't serve in the color guard this year on Memorial Day. I went, oh yeah? I went over and I gave my hat to somebody else and I took the blue hat.
Because it was such an elite unit, that
was.
nobody would give it up? Nobody would try and let a younger guy come in?
Well, you always wanted young guys because at one point Bobby Bedell Jr. got in. Brady Devlin got in. They were younger guys, but they came up under the same guys that I got in under. They were strict. It had to be about the flags.
Right.
And there was just no getting out of step. There was no talking. And then at one point, we just said, listen, there was none of this.
You're right.
No drinking
Right.
before a parade. We made up for that afterwards.
Right.
But there was no drinking before the parade because we had to lead. We had to set the pace.
Right.
So we decided amongst ourselves that we would not do that, and we just wouldn't drink.
But so I was in the band all those years, right?
Right.
And we went one year after the season was over. We got a call from Freeport. They said, "Would you guys come and march? We need you to march in New York City with us."
Right.
So we went. We go on the bus, and it's us. Me and Tommy Regan were there from Oceanside. Freeport guys. There was guys from every band. right? And this guy put together this little hodgepodge band, and he gets paid for it, right? So we're on the bus. Now we're talking to guys from, out east someplace. And they had a band, and the guy goes, man, he goes, we couldn't figure out what your secret was. He goes, we used to have people walk alongside the band, like, what is this guy's secret? And they always come and say, those guys have a good time. He goes, they're laughing and joking. But he goes, when they go by the judges, they're like, they put it all together. And he goes, they're straight as an arrow. And he goes, and the other thing they do is, he goes, every song you guys end with a stinger, like a ba-bang, right? And he goes, every single song. It's like, that's your thing, man. You always end with a stinger. And I go, yeah, forever. I get it.
And you know, that was the second part of the joy of being in the color guard, is because there was two aspects of listening to the band. One, in the ranks where you march behind the band, behind the chiefs, and you're 75 or 100 feet behind the band. Right. And then there was marching in front of the band. And let me tell you something. My spine tingled sometimes. Like when they played the Magnificent Seven, it got us fired up. There was like 5 songs where we were like, yeah, let's go. And there was sometimes where the band was so loud we couldn't even hear each other.
Right. Wow.
And, you know, some guys used to complain about that. The band's too loud. I go, they're never too loud. I said, the louder they play, the better I'm going to march.
Yeah.
I said, so it was a joy.
Yeah, I remember.
And the band was so good for so long.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I remember Mike Seelover said to me, man, when you guys play, he goes, you see everybody stand up straight.
Yes.
And he goes, all of a sudden now you got your chest out. And
Sadly, you don't see that much today.
No, and I you know, and it went hand in hand, like the demise of the band went along with the decline in the membership of the department and everything else. And it wasn't just Oceanside. It was because you look, Freeport had a very good band, and they had their own band for years, but they lost that as well.
Right.
You know.
Yeah,
So
there's very few. Not like the old days, man.
no, and Suffolk County though still has it. Like those big
Really?
fire department bands still exist. Brentwood, Islip, you know, some of those big giant bands, like, you know, the Long Island Mummers.
Yeah.
Do you remember them? They used to
Sure.
dress up. They're gone. They dissolved.
Yeah.
And they were such a big part of a parade
Listen,
because you always enjoyed watching them. Their outfits were amazing.
My nephew was saying, Sean, he says, yeah, he goes, we're looking for a band for Oceanside for whatever, Memorial Day parade, one of the parades.
Right.
So I go, well, I don't know. So he goes, we can't. He goes, we paid $3,000. I go, you paid $3,000? I said, you can't get guys together? No. So I'm sitting here last year. The phone rings. Guy goes, Willie Costigan? I said, yeah. He says, I'm from Farmingdale Fire Department. I go, it was the Friday before Memorial Day weekend.
Right.
And I go, yeah. I go, what do you need? So he goes, yeah, I'm from Farmingdale Fire Department. I'm the chief. Looking for the band. I go, what band? He goes, the Oceanside Fire Department band. I go, they're not even around anymore. So I go, how'd you get my number? So he goes, I'm going through looking for names. He goes, your name popped up. So he goes,
And what, like an index?
He needs,
Yes.
well, you know,
A
it's funny.
Rolodex?
You know, it's funny because I had the list of bands from the AOH.
Right.
So I says, I got a list of bands. He goes, send it over to me. I go, but you're starting today for Monday? And he goes, I started 4 months ago. He goes, I can't get a band for our own parade. He goes, it's really bad.
Yeah.
And I will say, being one of the younger guys, I take a personal interest in being a part of the color guard.
Right.
Very easy to get into these days.
Right.
And that after every march that we do, that's the first thing that says, we need a band the next time we come together.
Right. Yep.
I'm talking to Woody and Dougie Graham. So we got to put together like a machine, like a band machine. I go, you can't get the
Yeah.
guys.
And you know what? It's
the music,
fascinating
though.
with Billy Lynch and Freddie Robinson putting all this history together. And now that with the introduction of social media and the way it is to scan a picture or a video or something like that, all of the pictures that were ever taken of us in parades all over the county, nobody has any.
Yeah.
There are very few pictures of the color guard. And I'm like, how is that even possible?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, people used to stand there in the middle of the street and take pictures of us, and nobody's got.
I think they're in a box in somebody's closet
Right.
somewhere.
Well, you want to hear some? My brother-in-law, Billy Brown.
Yeah,
Tommy
from Baldwin.
Brown?
Right,
When they were kids growing up, they were buffs.
right,
They used to tape record the dispatcher every single call.
right.
So they had boxes of these tapes. So when my nephews got old enough, Billy says, let's get the tapes out. Let's play some of the tapes, the old calls. They were just getting interested in the fire department.
Right.
And you remember Baldwin, the dispatchers, the personalities,
Yes.
the guys you'd listen and
Yeah.
they'd give the whole story over there. And he had all that.
Right.
And single tens and, working fire. And they said, maybe the historian wants that. The historian thought he got a treasure chest handed to him. He's like, this is unbelievable. And it's not anywhere. You can't get it.
No.
And it's all hundreds of tapes of calls from like the 1970s and 80s and
Yep.
up until they got in, and they go like, yeah, they wanted them because now that you can go online and listen to all the calls, they've been putting them online for a couple of years now.
Yeah, one of the guys that when I became a dispatcher, one of the guys that I had listened to that really you kind of modeled yourself after or wanted to be like was this guy he's passed on now, Pete Gay. He was a
Good guy.
real good guy. He was a dispatcher for a long time. Absolute gentleman. Gentleman on the phone, gentleman on the air, gentleman in
Right.
in
Right.
in
How
life.
long did you dispatch for?
Full time was 13 years
In Oceanside.
in Oceanside. Yeah.
And then you went on to be FDNY.
Well, I went to Hicksville for a short period of time, for like 3 years. I went to Hicksville for 3 years, and then the FDNY job came about after that.
And how long you been doing that?
20 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm in my 20th year.
Very good.
And I'm hoping that's my final year.
All right, and let's go back to being in the fire department. Tell me about the fires that you went to in
Well,
Oceanside.
the first night I actually got in, I got sworn into the fire department, and you get voted in. You of course you go down to the firehouse, you wait for a call, and then we got an automatic alarm at South Nassau, and it wound up being a signal 10.
At the hospital.
Yeah, it was in the lab in the back of the
Right,
building
right, I
on the
remember
Washington Avenue side.
What year was that? Do you remember?
84,
Wow.
and January of 84.
Was that that was a major job with mutual
Yeah,
aid?
it was in the lab in the
Yeah.
back, and the fire started. I mean, it was nasty because
Chemicals.
from chemicals, formaldehyde, all that was burning, and the stink was just oof.
Yeah.
I mean that. I didn't go inside, but you smelled it outside, and it was.
Did you think to yourself, I'm in my glory, or what did I do?
Oh no! I was hooked.
Yeah.
And I looking back on it and reflecting, we had a lot of fires back then, and I always tell people that I learned to become a fireman in Oceanside. I learned to become a really good fireman in Long Beach
Oh, yeah.
because back then, when I got in, we were coming down here.
Right.
I don't know, sometimes once a week. In the winter, we were coming down here a lot. And then
The coldest nights.
the coldest nights, we guaranteed we would go to the firehouse because we were going Long Beach, And I remember at least it was probably 3 or 4 times where, we were on the second alarm. So the policy was that we would go down there and we would relocate and stand by at headquarters. We almost never did that. Every time we came over the bridge, we got redirected to the fire because it grew in intensity.
Remember, you would come over the bridge and say, "There it is."
Yeah. And then
You see the glow.
and then there was a couple of times where we got directed to our own fires and caught signal 10s first due
Right.
from taking in another alarm.
Wow.
And it was chaotic down here for a long time.
Yeah.
And it didn't get better, I'm going to say, until like the late 80s, the early 90s.
Yeah. A lot of abandoned buildings down here. and-
I mean, I can drive by in buildings that I crawled down the hallway in. Just that we had 1 fire, 2 fires, 3 fires in the building. Shore Road. I mean, forget it. It was endless. But we just had a lot of fires back then.
Were you at the overturned tanker on Long Beach Road?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was one of the first people there because we lived on Henrietta Avenue.
Yeah.
And the original call, that was,
That was Long Beach and Cortland?
that was Long Beach and Cortland, and it was March of 1984. I just gotten in, and the pages went off, and Steve and I had woken up, and he said, "I'm going to the firehouse," and obviously I was we were in the dark, it was a blackout, so we're like,
right. Power was up.
somebody must have hit a pole. Okay, so
It came over as a general alarm? Is that how it came
No,
over?
it came over as
Auto accident?
auto accident. So Steve gets in the car. He takes off for Southside. I go up the block, and there's nothing going on. And I get to the corner of Long Beach and Henrietta. I'm looking up and down Long Beach Road. I don't see anything. So I noticed that there's a cop in the parking lot of the Big Banana, the Big Banana, and there's a guy with her. And he seems frantic. I said, oh, let me go over there, and I'll ask them what's going on. I step out onto Long Beach Road. Boom.
Oh.
And I look north on Long Beach Road, and all I see is this giant fireball, the entire width of Long Beach Road, coming towards me. And I'm like, now I had no idea that it was a tanker.
Yeah.
I just remember the cop started screaming. The guy, so the guy who I later learned was the truck driver. He had ran for help because he had passed her and saw her sitting in the parking lot.
Okay.
And when we collided with the car, he didn't know what to. There was no cell phone.
What time of night is this?
Like 3 a.m.
Okay.
3:30 in the morning. So I remember I ran back down Lawrence Avenue and ran north towards Cortland.
Was it cold out? Or you
Yeah,
said
it was
in
snowing.
March? Oh, it was. Okay.
It was snowing, and I remember people running out of their homes. Like the cops were talking about evacuating homes, and they didn't have to do that.
Right.
Those people were all leaving on their own. They were they were at
What was there a hazard? That was a gas truck?
gasoline truck.
So it was gas all over?
It had spilled in the ground. He had collided with the car, and the truck driver was trying to rescue the remaining occupant of the car out, who at that time he didn't know was already deceased. And when the truck exploded, he just ran. And the reason it exploded because there was a car that followed him up Long Beach Road, and when he drove past the accident scene, the street was full of gas.
Oh.
Catalytic converter underneath the car.
And there it is.
Lit the fumes, and that was it. It was all. And he actually jumped out of his car. If you remember, it crashed into the chicken place.
Right. Well, my story is I'm driving back from Florida with Mark Stolman.
Yeah.
And we pulled
X-ray.
we pulled into the toll at the Verrazano. I said, let me grab a paper. Remember these seller papers out there? Let me grab a paper. I go, front page, death and disaster. I go, wow, Oceanside. What? I go, looks like everything burned down in town.
And you know what's the funniest story that came out of that, out of all the tragedy, is because of the blackout.
Steve Klein.
No, Billy Telford was the chief of the department, and back then we didn't have pagers. He still had the plectron. So because the power went out.
Oh, no plectron. Right.
He slept.
Yes.
He lived a block away and slept through the entire thing.
Steve Klein said it. I asked him about it, and he goes, I went to the post office that morning. They said, you're not at the call? And he's like, what call? Right? And he
Because
goes,
his plectron was dead.
yeah. He goes, I didn't even know what was going on. He was, I was at work.
It was just an incredible call, and then we couldn't see, and we would Gary Bedell and I think Skippy Wolfert or somebody else had rescued the guy out of the car that he was then deceased,
Yeah.
And then there was a second body laying there that had been ejected out of the car,
And
and then
how many stores burned down?
6. And then what was wild that the tanker had crashed right up against Whitbread's lumber. And the way the wind was blowing, it blew it east or across the street. So the whole fuel load went into the stores.
Yeah.
And the lumber yard,
Was safe.
which would have destroyed
Yeah.
2 square blocks,
Yeah.
just never caught on fire.
Oh, angels were with you.
What,
on
what
that.
time did you get out of it?
Oh, it was noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It was quite a long time.
Okay.
But that was
Was that the highest caliber job you ever had?
in Oceanside.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was the biggest fire that
Yeah.
I had been to in Oceanside. Not the biggest fire I've ever, probably down here.
But that will top any major house fire.
Oh yeah.
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 Okay, and then what was the equipment of the trucks in Southside when you joined? Do you remember?
We had the 64 Mac, and we had the 69 Mac, and then we had the 1981 E1,
Okay, right.
which was nobody in the place was a fan of that fire truck. at all. There's plenty of pictures of it.
It was
but
a phase. It was a phase.
Yes.
The E1
Was that a
phase.
new rig or a used one?
no, it was a demo.
Oh, so you got it.
Yeah, one of the commissioners at the time.
Did a little shopping, thought he could
Yes.
save some money.
Yeah, he went down to Florida and he came
Right.
back from Florida with 2 fire trucks.
Yeah.
And one of them went to Salamander,
Yeah.
and the other, and they couldn't get out of their own way. There was problems with them. I mean, it was an upstart company down in, which is now a legitimate fire truck manufacturer. But those 2 rigs.
They made their bones on that one.
Yeah.
didn't it?
And they were just problems with them all the time. You
How
know?
long did it last before you replaced it? Or did you?
Yeah, that stayed until we got the Han in 1986. And that was the start of an incredible transition, because every one of those Hans that we got were capable of anything.
Was that the top of the line back?
No, they were just a small truck manufacturer in Pennsylvania, and the entire time that they existed, they only built like 80 fire trucks a year because they put quality ahead of quantity. So regardless of what was going on or how many orders, they were like, no, we're building 85 fire trucks a year.
Right.
That's it.
Wow.
So they, and the quality was there without a doubt, because we were happy to the point when the board decided that they were going to get rid of the original 247, which was because they had to get an enclosed cab. We asked them if they would give it to R.D. Murray upstate to retrofit and put it on a new chassis and make it a little bit longer, because there was nothing wrong with the truck. It was 10 years old, and it was in perfect shape. And Eddie Bedell, ex-chief Eddie Bedell, worked for Han at the time, and he sold Oceanside, the first one, which went to Terrace. And that was, that was and it still is an incredible fire truck. I think one of the ex-members of Terrace owns that truck privately.
Oh, really? Who's that?
Think of his name in a second, but it's privately owned now.
Wow.
You said they had to get a truck with an enclosed cab.
Yeah,
Does
that-
that mean that the trucks prior were open?
They were all open cabs back then, all of them.
Rear step and
Yeah, but I got to tell you, and this goes back to rescue, because all of the open cab trucks, it was great to ride on them.
Yeah.
Nothing beat riding on rescues.
floodlight.
Yes. Oh my God,
At a high rate of speed.
that truck was incredible. It had its own reputation.
It was like being on like a B rig,
Right. Right.
going to calls.
Yep.
If you didn't hold on the back of that thing, there's a good chance you're going off.
Yes.
You would
Yep.
bump some. Woo-hoo.
I don't
And-
know, when I joined in '89, and
Right.
that wasn't allowed. You weren't allowed to go on.
Right, that was the transition time, right
Yeah.
about then,
Yeah.
that we were getting rid of those open cabs. But what was it, 245A?
2452.
2452.
It was 242A.
And it had a 454 in it. And it just, you got a hell of a ride on that truck. And
That was like I brought up about you go to Columbia when Reverend Cook would
Yeah,
drive,
Reverend Cook.
right?
Right.
The Lord is with us. And
Yes.
you'd go like, woo! You'd be
Well-
going down Fulton Avenue, like
Right.
the Ho Chi Minh Trail over there. Boom, boom, boom.
right, and
God
the
is
other
with us.
And the other thing was back then was having the privilege of riding the old 246
Yeah.
with Al Tires driving.
Right.
Because it had a manual shift, and it was a low body truck, so he had a way of being able to shift without using the clutch, and it was seamless. And when you were going down Atlantic Avenue, he was reaching speeds of 60 miles an hour, and you just held on. And they didn't call it the Red Rocket for nothing. It had its own reputation,
Right.
and to drive on that truck. But I mean, back being on what they call being on the tail step or the back step. We're from that generation, and I thought I'd miss it when the order came down, and they said, hey, listen, we can't do this anymore because of NFPA rules and OSHA rules and everything else. Okay, fine. And then we were all upset about it, but then after we got the enclosed cabs and we started riding, I'm like, what the hell were we doing?
Hey, even Willie's
Hey,
grandfather, John Hamilton, he fell
Yep.
off.
How many times?
I was working that day.
Were you?
Yes, I was dispatching. and I saw them fall.
That was Marlborough Road. They were going to Single 10.
Yep,
Marlborough
and
Road.
they made the right onto Oceanside Road from Foxhurst.
And he made a left.
And I saw, and he made a left. And he went right out, and you know what? You know what saved his life was the fact that
He wears his helmet.
always put
Yeah.
that helmet on.
Yeah.
He would ride in the open seat in the old tower ladder, and they made the right, and he made a left and went out over the door. And
See the OFD discipline instilled.
yeah, but Paul Grimm was the officer, and Chris was driving, and they swore they killed him.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and they get out, and there's Johnny
There he is.
Hamilton.
He's up. Yeah, he jumped up.
Up on his feet,
He's got a bump on his head,
Yeah.
and you know, and
smoking
and,
a Camel.
And Chris and Paul Grimm aged 5 years right
Yeah,
there.
right,
Yes.
right.
You know, and they got back to the firehouse, and you see that they were both white as
Yeah.
could be, and Johnny's just Johnny. Hey, you know,
Give me a whiskey.
yeah.
Let me light up my
He would
Camel.
be what, your great grandfather?
Great grandfather.
Yeah.
That's John's namesake.
Yes, and just a real tough guy.
Yeah.
You know, and a gentleman too.
And yeah, well, it's funny because Donnie Jackson said to me one day, "Oh, I love your grandfather's brogue." I go, "What are you talking about? What brogue?"
When did he have a brogue?
I mean, he was from Ireland, but it's like
Yes.
you get so used to him talking, it was like I don't hear it.
No, yeah, the same way when I was growing up. You know, my grandparents, they both had it, the heavy brogue, and I would invite my school friends into the house, and I would begin talking to my grandmother, and they were like, "Bill, what'd your grandmother just say?" And I'm like, "She wanted a cup of tea," and they're like, "You understood that?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah. Well, how come you guys?" They're like, "We can't understand a word she's saying."
I had my cousin here, and we were at a barbecue over here, and from Ireland, and another guy from town stopped over from Dublin. He's from Belfast.
Right.
And they go, "Hey, our friend lives up the block. Can we invite him over?" Sean Murray. Yeah, call him up. So now it's 2:00 in the morning. And I said, "You walked up and you heard these three Irish guys talking?
Right.
They could have been speaking Spanish, man, because you couldn't understand a word that was coming out of any one of them. Any one of them.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
Sean and Steven,
Yeah.
right? And then Steven's son, Oren,
Yeah.
says, Dad, I want to go home. It's like 2 a.m.
He's like
I want to
16
go
years old.
home. And Steven says, Oren, we're talking business. And that was it. Oren just sat in a chair and waited.
So going back to now, I want to talk about the tournament team.
Right.
Okay, Southside, big tournament, guys.
Yes.
Right. Was that part of the draw into the fire department for you?
It was. Yeah. And
Were other companies or was it just Southside?
no,
Hose
Hose Company
Company.
had it, Columbia had it, and the other companies had. Everybody had a drill team back then.
But
I think
South
maybe
was
with
the premier.
Yeah, and it had just restarted because Ronnie Hoffman had joined. He was in Hewlett for a long time, and he moved to Oceanside. He joined, and it used to be the Boondockers, and then it was the Mariners, and they had broken up sometime in like the mid '70s, and it was really there was nobody coming into the company. They weren't getting young guys. So anyway, along comes 1981, 1982, and 1983. And I think I was one of like 18 people to join the company, 19 people. And that was true of all of the other companies. At that time in the early 80s, the fire departments were growing immensely. You know, they were getting a lot of influx.
Why do you think? What was the draw? Or is it just the timing?
I don't know. I mean, obviously it's a different era.
Sure.
So we didn't have two jobs back then. You know, you had one job.
But the fire department was really social. Very
yes.
social.
Yes.
And it was today. It's a little more work
Right.
oriented and training and stuff.
Yes, because
back then, I mean,
right, because some of the guys now in my own department in Point Lookout, they're sitting there like, well, you know, how do you know all these guys from Freeport? How do you know guys from East Williston? How do you know? How is it that you know guys from Oyster Bay? Right. I'm like, because I grew up with these. I'm also 60 years old. I've known a lot of these people for 40 plus years. Right. You know, so you know, and when you reach the age that we do, you get to know some people.
Sure.
Right.
So I attended all of the South Shore meetings, the drill team captains meetings,
right.
and so you made friends. You went racing, and yeah, the drill team was a great way to extend that socialize. You know, beyond the regular, you know, get-togethers and the way we used to pal around doing nothing.
Right.
You know, but just in Oceanside, because you know, on top of the firehouses, there was how many bars were there in Oceanside?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
15,
Remember,
18?
after every parade, go back to one of the firehouses for a
Right.
party, and you stayed there all night. And
Is drill team something you try out for, or you're automatically in it?
Well, you automatically you became a part of the company, and then you didn't have to join the drill team, but almost all of us did, And then I remember the first year we raced in '83. It was the first year that Southside had run again, and we finished like third or something like that, and we made mistakes, but I remember looking at Freeport Truck, and those guys celebrating, hosting all the trophies. I want to be like that. I'm not jealous of them, and I'm not mad at them, but I want to do that. I want to be the person raising that trophy, So.
Oh, hey, remember like the Patchogue 40 Thieves? Those guys were like
Right.
They was like Jesus walking down the street
Right.
when they came down the street.
So what happened is Ronnie Hoffman molded us, and he molded us not only to become better at what we were doing, and we had to realize that we had to practice this sometimes 2 or 3 nights a week, that we had to know the rules. And so Ronnie gave us a rule book, and we all had to know it. We all had to know what the rules were in every different event, so that if one guy missed them, overlooked something, one of the rest of us was going to catch it. So obviously that transferred into us the next year, finishing second, and then second, and then finally winning the championship. And then we won the 2nd Battalion. We wound up in 1990 winning Nassau County Championship. We won the parade that night, so we won the tournament and the.
So this was it. This was more important than hanging out at the bars, having a girlfriend, doing anything other than your practice.
Because it again, just like the color guard thing, it was drilled into us that you're going to have to drill at this. You're going to have to be repetitive at this if you're going to want to compete. If you just want to go out for a day's fun and run, but we used to see the guys that amassed the team that morning and decided they'd run. And that's where the injuries came in. Guys weren't ready, tripping over hose. They hadn't practiced it. They didn't take it seriously, and we used to.
And I'm sure nobody wants to be laughed at a tournament.
No. So over a period of 10 years, we took an enormous amount of trophies back to Southside.
Really?
And it paid off. It paid off because we did our own fundraising, but at the same time, the commissioners were like, "Okay, look, what do you want? Well, we need this. Okay, you'll get it," because it was paying off. There was a payoff at the end. It was like we're bringing home trophies. We're not taking this money from the board or the department and just wasting it on something.
Hey, Bill, you remember when Oceanside used to have the tournament,
Right.
and the tournament would run from 10 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
up until 7 at night. It was still going when the parade was getting ready to start.
Right.
Guys were trying to get back for the parade, and
Right.
it's like they were doing buckets and they're trying to finish the buckets. And
And then we used to have to set up for. It took us a week and a half to get the field ready for the parade and drill. And there was it was so big that there was a parade committee and a drill committee. They were separate because it wasn't. It would take a whole year to organize the parade and drill.
Steve Klein brought up that Johnny Zullo would take his 2-week vacation to get ready for the parade every year. That's how dedicated the guy was.
And we used to be down at the field the whole week and a half prior to the thing.
Right.
We'd have to open the field houses where we cooked the barbecues. We got the refrigerators, plugged them in, made sure they were running, and then cut the grass, got all the cobwebs out, opened up everything and repainted the lines, did everything, But they made it enjoyable. They brought down food every night. We had beers and water and soda and everything to make the night go by.
Club meeting.
Wait, at that time, were the other companies as dedicated?
All involved. Yes. Everybody that was.
And then even the day after the parade,
Right.
meet for the cleanup.
Yeah, because we had to go back on
Everybody's
Sunday.
sunburned.
Right.
At the parade all day.
So, but I mean, it was a special time.
Yeah.
Because, it was work, but, they made it worth your while.
Right.
There was a relaxing end of it, where you could just sit and.
Everybody knew everybody. That was
Right.
the show.
And-
So what I want to talk about, I want to talk about your brother, Steve.
Right.
So tell me, I know he was a little wiry guy, and he was a climber, and
Yeah, he was one of the fastest guys. He was all in
Absolutely.
on the fire end. He was in on everything. Yeah. And I had
Great guy. Great guy.
And I had when I joined, I had gone through being an officer and everything else like that, and I was pretty young when I did it. But Steve was one of those guys that was just gonna. You could see that he was learning it quick. He took a leadership role, was taking classes, stuff like that. So you knew that he wasn't there just for the camaraderie and the socializing.
And Steve was your younger brother?
He was younger than me. He was 3 years younger than me. So you could see that had he lived, he definitely would have excelled. He would have
Absolutely
been an officer and a chief and stuff like that.
He would be, if he'd be sitting at this table right now.
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
right.
Can I share the narrative of what?
Yeah, absolutely. And then we can,
Okay, so this was on June 5th, 1986, while performing a practice drill on a ladder, Stephen Wade fell from a height of nearly 25 feet, suffering from other things a traumatic brain injury. Assistance was rendered immediately, and he was removed from the scene via the fire department ambulance to a nearby hospital. On June 13th, after 8 days of hope, at the age of 23, Stephen Wade was removed from life support and listed among the Oceanside Fire Department line-of-duty deaths for that year. I cannot even imagine what you and your family had gone through, but does it give you some comfort that the fire department family and by extension the community
1,000%, because
kind of went through it with you?
One thing that my parents didn't understand is how tight and how supportive the extended family was in the fire department. In the days after the funeral and everything else, my dad had a different view of the fire department because he couldn't believe how they surrounded my family. And
How many kids are in your family?
8.
8. Okay.
Yeah. So
And where did Steve come in?
right in the middle. He was, I was 5, Steve was 6, and then my 2 sisters. So basically, a little bit more towards the end, but number 6
Okay.
of the
And
8.
So where were you when this happened?
We had 2 things going on that night. They decided to practice for an upcoming drill that weekend, and we had department ops at the fire school.
Wow. Okay.
So I was required, because they had completed basic training and primaries and all that stuff. So I was required to go to Bethpage that night. Okay. So we did. We got through the evolution, and there was some guys. I wound up driving the chief's car to Bethpage, and we were sitting there, and we went through the first evolution, and then all of a sudden the chiefs are like, "Okay, wrap it up. We're done. We're going back home." Okay, so I still don't know what's going on, and I remember Chris Andos, somebody else, getting in a car with me, but they said I couldn't drive.
Did they knew?
They knew.
Okay.
They had Bethpage had gotten a phone call. So anyway, so now we're headed back to town, and I begin to get this sinking feeling that something's very wrong, but I don't know what yet. And nobody in the car would talk to me. They wouldn't tell me what was going on. They just said, we're going back to town. So then we're heading towards South Nassau, and I'm like, why are we going this way? And then I remember pulling in the emergency room, and I saw my father standing there, and I'm like, okay, this is bad.
You knew, yeah.
Whatever's going on, this is real bad.
And all the guys from the firehouse were there?
They followed us back.
No, what about the guys from the tournament team? Were they?
They were all there. Yeah, they were all at the hospital.
Okay.
And when I got out, my father gave me the drill on what happened. He told me what happened. He says he's in surgery already, the whole 9 yards.
They were hopeful.
Well, I don't know if they were hopeful, but they told me what was going on.
Okay.
And then all through the night, I think this is where it really influenced my dad, was that the emergency room, the parking lot of the emergency room was full of Oceanside firemen.
Yes.
Who had never left that night. They just filled the parking lot, filled the emergency room, and they weren't going anywhere.
Prior to that, did your dad think it was it's just a
Yeah, he thought it was
fire
like,
around,
it was
no big deal.
like, you guys are wasting your time. Why, it was like, all right, you go to the firehouse for drinking or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
It's fun. I remember when we were with Chief Klein, he had lost his dad at the age of 16. So
Right.
when he found the fire department, it kind of helped him, in
Right.
fact, maybe even saved him
His
because he
story
found a
was
family.
he came home from school and his father had died of a heart attack.
Right.
The fireman was still there at the house with his parents, with his
Right.
mother, and he goes like they could have left, and he goes, they didn't. He goes, that's what influenced me to
Right.
be part of
And
it.
he too, he said, lifelong friends, 40,
Right.
50 years. And
So
he
that
still
night
has.
in the emergency room, we were brought upstairs to the waiting room area off of the OR. And again, that whole hallway was full of Oceanside firemen.
Right.
Just, numbers I don't know about, but I just remember it being, besides my immediate family, just a ton of guys. To the point where I remember speaking with your brother, because he was chief, baby chief at the time, or first deputy, and they said, listen, can you send these guys home? Because they're just, there's nothing for them to do.
Right.
And your brother said, they're not leaving.
Right.
Figure out something because they're not leaving, And that was a true story. So, long story short, I had talking to Lenny Gibfried, who was, or Kenny Gibfried, who was in the OR with
Right,
me.
he worked there. Yeah.
And I then, knowing more than my parents and knowing more than everybody, and hadn't been on rescue calls, and I really got I really fully understood the devastation of how bad the injury was. And I remember turning to your brother, and I said, it's time for you to plan a funeral. And he goes, Bill, you don't know that. And I said, no. I said, listen, I'm telling you straight. I remember distinctly having that conversation with your brother and saying, it's time to plan a funeral.
Yeah.
So there was no brain activity. We had hoped for something, but
Yeah, I just remember it took the wind out of all the sails.
and everybody.
Yeah.
And I saw the impact that it had on the whole rest of the department because up until that point, we had lost Bill Kerner and several other members of the department, but Oceanside never lost a young guy, right? And that had deeply impacted not only my family but the Oceanside Fire Department family, and it was
Listen,
devastating.
and everybody knew your brother, man.
Right.
Everybody knew
Right,
him.
right. And so I remember we had the wake in the firehouse because the funeral home, Mackin said we can't have
Yeah.
it. So we used the funeral home. We used the hall at Southside, and at one point we had the fire department thing, and I remember I got up on the truck. I walked outside, and I couldn't as far.
Yeah.
Neil Court was just blue. Wow. It was just firemen.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It was just firemen. So I was like, and then I remember, there were periods during the wake and the funeral and stuff that are vivid to me, and then others that, people bring back to me and say, hey, do you remember? No, it was a blur, but that's the case with anybody who suffers something like that. Right. You'll remember moments, and then there's other parts where people will try to pick your brain. You go, no.
And seeing that, is that what sustained you and your family? Like, was that comforting to your parents?
Very, very comforting to my parents. Extremely comforting to my parents because, like I said, they had a completely different view of the fire department afterwards. And even in the weeks and the months following Steve's passing, and even years, my mom would go to all these events. She would go to the parade. She would go to the drills and everything else, and she loved it. And they began to love my mom. So it definitely had a positive. Something good always comes out of something bad. Sure. I firmly believe that, and that was what happened. Yeah, and
I always find that people can be in any kind of organization, and it doesn't matter what it is, and they're having a good time, and it's great. But civil service, whether paid or not, is a different animal.
Right.
And it's like when one hurts, they all hurt.
Right.
So they rally, I think, bigger, better,
right.
best.
And through the fire department, now that I'm on the professional side with the FDNY and the NYPD, and that's it's a camaraderie. It's a brother, and they'll be around you, and sometimes for decades afterwards.
Yeah.
They're just the people go about leaving you. They go on with their lives, but during anniversaries, maybe a holiday or something like that, they won't let you forget.
Oh, sure.
Even on a personal note, like when my wife passed away, things got a little better after she passed away. But as the holidays come up, anniversaries come up, there are people that always reach out to you and say, "Hey, listen,
So
they're not
you're
forgotten."
okay. Yeah.
And then and then a few years ago, I think it was 2019, when they did the street renaming. And Anthony D'Esposito and Freddie Robinson and a couple of guys from Oceanside had done a tremendous job in getting that done. You know, I thought it was a tremendous honor, and you know, it was a way for them to say, "Hey, listen, you're never forgotten."
Right.
And by doing that street naming thing, that was it was like a permanent mark. Like, hey, all of these guys, and you know, I hoped at the time that Steve would be the last name. And since then, there's been 3 names
Yeah.
added to it, and Oceanside has the largest amount of line of duty deaths than any other department in the county.
Yeah. I remember when I came in, Bubba had just passed away.
Right.
Just right before.
And that was extremely devastating to all of us.
Yeah.
That ripped I mean, personally, that tore me up because
Yeah.
he was that well loved. You know?
You know what happened? They brought a the guy comes to talk to you about.
Oh,
Oh,
a counselor.
Yeah, they brought him from the city fire department.
Right. Counseling unit.
Yeah, and he came in and he's talking. One of your chiefs died, and I go, I don't think he understands in the volunteer fire department. The chief is everybody's buddy.
Right.
You know, like in the city fire department, the
Right.
chief is the boss.
Right.
Here,
Right.
this is the guy that everybody knows.
Yes.
And I go, I think he missed that, like that. I understand what he's talking about.
Right.
You lost your chief, but you know, and I go, he doesn't understand that Bubba's everybody's
Right.
friend. You know?
Yeah, in the New York City Fire Department, about 8% of the guys in the fire department actually know personally
Right.
the chief of the department.
Right.
You know, I've met him a couple of times, but you know, I've also in my time in the fire department, I've gone through about 10 chiefs.
Yeah.
You know, they stay 2 years and they're gone.
Yeah.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Who was the one that was my age from Terrace? Got run over by a
Frankie Ragusa.
Oh,
Frank
Frankie
Ragusa,
Ragusa.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was another one. That
Yeah.
was just
Yeah, 'cause he
That's
was
because he was so young. you
right.
know.
Yeah, and that happened a year later.
Right.
That happened almost to a day
After
a
Bubba?
day after Steve died.
After Steve.
He's
And Frankie was another guy. Everybody knew him.
Right.
For some reason, you know, everybody knew him. And,
well, he was a young guy. He was cocky. He was charismatic. He was dating my sister Kathy at the time, and so it was another personal thing because he was over my house all the time. So
Yeah.
it was close. Anyway, that even though that didn't happen, it happened with sanitation. It affected us directly because it involved another member of the department.
Right.
You know, and it was just
And it being so soon.
right. But we all rallied against each other, and then just a year later we lost Bubba. You know, so we went through a 3 or 4 year stretch there and then
Yeah, it's very dark.
Right.
Very dark day.
And Joe Jarvis's dad, who got killed on Lawson Boulevard.
right. Yeah, and he was he was directing traffic and I had just come on duty working for Oceanside, doing the 4 to 12, and next thing I know, I heard the ambulance 242 en route under escort to, and it was Louis Cat on the radio, and I'm like, Louis Cat's never in the ambulance. Why is he on the radio? And they're screaming past us, and I'm like, what just happened? And Vinny McManus, who was working down in Long Beach, called me. He said, Billy, I think one of your guys just got hit. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So it turned out that it was a leg fracture. Wasn't much. He got hospitalized, and then, a day or two passed, and he was just recuperating and thing, but he had a fractured femur. And that the side effect of that sometimes is a blood clot. It's a common thing with, it's a common after effect of a femur fracture.
And that's what did him in.
That's what did him in. He was just sitting there and he just coded, in the hospital.
Yeah.
And there was nothing, they could have had him on the operating table. There was nothing, that they could do for him. So he wasn't younger, but still it was a.
Well, because Joey was our age, and Joey,
Right.
was ex-captain at that time, I guess.
Right.
And, yeah.
But, looking back on Steve's passing and Bubba's and everything else, it was devastating to us. But I think it made us tighter. We all, I think in the end, we all appreciated each other just a little bit more, even though, there was rivalry between the companies. I think that we did better. You know what I mean? And now you look, like I said, you look decades later, and we're all still friends.
Yeah.
Yes.
For those that are still around, and the others that have fled, back in the day, I mean, it was great going to rescue on a Sunday morning, you know, and sitting there and having to exchange the bottles and sitting there and
Right.
and then they had milk cartons and you would sit there and and while they were exchanging the bottles, you'd sit there and turn the oxygen on, and it would get rid of your hangover in about 3 seconds. And,
Well, you know, I was telling.
and then you'd start all over again, and
Right.
it would take you 15 minutes to refill the bottles. But we wound up leaving there 2 hours later. I don't know why.
to go someplace else. Yeah. But I was talking to those guys. I said, you know, 40 years ago, the night before Thanksgiving, I caught Woody. Woody was in the police academy.
Right.
Caught him getting out off the train. Me and Billy Shuckman were in the car. Come on, let's go out.
Another
We'll-
great guy. Gone too soon.
We'll go have a beer. So we went out 40 years ago.
Right.
We still do it right before Thanksgiving.
You and Woody.
Me, Woody, Mitch Lubitz, Dougie Graham, Tommy Regan.
Right.
Still get together. We did it the Saturday. We moved it to the Saturday before
Yeah.
because we couldn't recover in time anymore. For
Yeah, they were just too
Thanksgiving.
spent.
Yeah.
So let's make
Because
it.
I mean, you came later,
Yeah.
but the only thing is that those good times at rescue was still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just great. You know, I remember coming home from a parade. I don't know where we were, but there was the War of the Gargantuans, if you remember.
Oh yeah.
You remember we were sitting there, and I know this is before you joined, but we're sitting there and we're throwing them back and having a great time at rescue. I think we won the parade, and we were just having and Peter Stroll and Chris Andos got into it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and Peter Stroll slapped Chris Andos. And I'm like, everybody hit on the tables. Like, I mean, this is literally the two biggest guys in the fire department. And one just slapped the other. And I'm like, oh my God, this can't go on.
Titan against the
We're all
Titan.
gonna die just from these two having it out.
It was Peter. Peter slapped him, open hand slap.
Right.
It said, "I'm going to slap the clone right off your face."
And Chris, being the better man, just stood there. And to this day, I credit him because he went the high road on that.
Yeah.
And, you know, and he was another one because he got in as chief.
Yeah.
And then he got spooked because he was Bubba's deputy. He was right behind him. And he was only in a short time.
Yeah, he left.
And he left. And, you know, it was a few years. We wanted him to get back in the game. And then, you know, I think it was 3 or 4 years later or 5 years later, you know, he had thought about it. He said, you know, I want to
Go back.
and, you know, will it be okay? Will the department accept me and running for chief again? And he went in. It was a company like between the 6 companies. So it was like nobody's running against him.
Right.
Like Southside's not running a guy. Nobody.
How can anyone find fault in him
No,
leaving?
none, none whatsoever.
And
but when
then,
he went back in, we let him know that we were all behind him.
Right.
It was unanimous.
Another one was Tommy Bettis passing away.
Yeah.
Young guy.
Yeah. Yep. But, you know, I had worked, Mikey Stroll had worked at midnight when Bubba had his, and that was a blood clot too. It was in his leg, traveled up.
with Bubba.
Yeah.
He
Bubba-
carried a lady off the second floor over Hinks
Yeah.
Deli.
The night before, he had rescued a lady out of a big fire we had on Long Beach Road.
I was in the ambulance that night, so he brings the lady down and he comes to the back of the ambulance and he goes, she was upstairs in the fire, okay, and he goes, I should be the one going to the hospital. She's better than me. I said, you okay? You know, I'm good. And he walked away.
Right.
And the next day he's dead.
Right. Yeah, and he died that night. And, you know, that had really spooked Chris. You know, I mean, spooked all of us, obviously, but, you know, that was, I mean, we had very few devastating times or you know, but we had so many good times. You know, I mean, they outweigh everything. So much.
Listen, even talking to
20 to 1.
Sure.
You know, Bob Jacoby, 91 years old. I said, hey, tell me about the social end. His eyes lit up.
Right.
Oh, down at the fire, the parties we used to have down
Right.
there. And he goes right into waking up on the pool table. This guy's 91 years old. Yeah. But it was all about the social end of it. You know, the fires came with it, but it was
Right.
being down at the fires, the boys, and
Yes.
I used to say, join the fire department, get 250 friends overnight.
Right.
Yeah. And
Yep.
just his storytelling, it's like, oh, this guy had a pretty good time.
Yes. Yeah,
On
they
his
did.
dime.
And, you know, two of the guys that had left Terrace, Vic Sr. and Vic Jr., you know,
Krasnicki.
yeah, the Krosnickis, I mean, they had some stories.
Yeah.
And this goes back to when Vic owned the log cabin on Long Beach Road, you know, and we palled around in there too,
Right.
you know, and, in my younger days, when you weren't at your firehouse, it was easy to come, have another meeting point because there were so many bars in Oceanside.
Right.
And the Knights of Columbus was one.
You're going yesterday's.
Yes.
Somebody's bound to come in there.
And then yesterday's, which was Vic's Log Cabin.
Yep.
And that Sea Witch.
See what?
Oh my goodness!
See what I mean? As another gray hair pops out of my head, and it because there was the and I met so many people outside the fire department from palling around with older people, in these establishments, and obviously, they're all gone. But
Can you go into any town, Freeport, Rockville Center, Baldwin, and just see someone someone that would always say, Billy.
I do it with her all the time. You're sitting there and you get your name shot out. Hey, Billy Wade, and I'm like, a long story short, I did it. I was on vacation with a girl. We were down in Dominican Republic. We were down in the DR and we were snorkeling, and I'm sorry, scuba diving. And we went scuba diving, and we were down in the water, and we had 40 minutes down there. So afterwards, the instructor says, "All right, time to go up." So we all had the wherewithal. We up in the boat, and I come up in a different boat, and it didn't matter. So I come up in the boat, and they're all tied together. All the boats are tied together. So I come up in the boat, and she's in the boat. And I come up, and I had a shirt on to protect me from getting a sunburn, being fair skinned. So I climb up, I take my stuff off, I take my mask off and everything, and I got a shirt on that says Oceanside Fire Department. And this is in the
Dominican Republic.
And the guy goes, Oceanside, California, or Oceanside, New York? And I said, Oceanside, New York. He goes, Craig DeBorn?
Oh, dear.
I said, yes, as a matter of fact, I do. I then got slapped. Because she said, we can go visit the Dalai Lama.
Yeah. Right.
And you'll be on the middle of that mountain and you'll find some. But growing up, when I was young, that was my father.
Yeah.
Because my father, we could go anywhere. We could be upstate New York. Hey, Don Wade. I remember a story when I was a little kid. We went to Yankee Stadium, the old Yankee Stadium, before it was renovated. And I had to be 6, 7 years old, right? And we go down before the game. We get there early, and the Yankees are signing autographs along the side. So wherever we were sitting, I don't remember, but we were allowed down near the field during the warm-ups to get autographs. So Whitey Ford is down there, and he says, call him out. And I'm calling Whitey. And I'm from here to, maybe 10 feet. And he's not answering. He's answering the other kids. So my father leans over and he goes, just shout out, hey, Porky.
Okay.
I lean, I go, hey, Porky. With that, he looks at my father, goes, hey, Don, how you doing? I'm like,
he had the gift too.
Holy crap, Whitey Ford? And it turns out that they grew up as kids together in Astoria.
Oh, that's funny.
They were all local kids. And matter of fact, they all formed a street ball, stickball thing. And the stickball team in the late 40s were stickball champions of New York City for like 3 years in a row.
Wow.
4 years in a row. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, my dad knows Whitey Ford. It turned out that they were married in St. Joseph's a week apart.
Wow. Oh, wow.
My parents got married, and then Whitey Ford and his wife got married, and they both went to each other's weddings.
That's funny.
I didn't know this, and it back when my dad passed away, we had his wake in Towers, and we did the afternoon service, and then we were coming back for the evening part of the thing, and Bob Towers comes up to me and he goes, Bill, he goes, the doors are closed to the room. He goes, I think you should go in there. I said, why? He goes, just go in the room just by yourself. And I'm like, what's wrong? And I open up the door, and there all by himself is Whitey Ford,
Wow.
paying respects to my dad.
Wowee.
And he goes, He goes, I don't know if you know. I said, Mr. Ford's. I said, I met you when I was a little kid. Yeah. And he goes, I don't want to be a distraction. I came, your dad and I grew up together, and it just meant the world to me that he came in and didn't want to be, because if he had walked in during a service,
Autographs.
Yeah. It would have
Right.
been bedlam.
correct, it would have been
That's
better.
right. That's right.
So he gently slipped out the front door. They snuck him out and everything else like that. And then I didn't see him again until he passed away.
But do you get the sense that today they don't go from town to town? They're not really well known to each other.
And I wish the younger guys would do that in all the fire departments.
Yeah.
Just visit Freeport. Just go to Baldwin. Go to Uniondale.
They can't even go to another company. They get in trouble.
Right. Go to Rockville Center.
Right.
Just socialize with these guys,
right,
and not even in the firehouse.
Right.
Go to a tap room or something like that. And what do they call them now? Bistros, whatever
breweries.
Right, whatever they may be today. Just guys, just pal around with each other.
So
the reward is overwhelming.
Oh, sure.
You're the chief of the fire department now
I am.
till April.
I am. Yeah, I'll be finishing my 6 years.
Very good. And
This is just for the listener.
Point Lookout.
Yeah, Point Lookout, Leo.
Right.
all right. And then what are you gonna do then?
Well, I'm looking to retire from the FDNY. I've done 20 years there, and then my combined time in civil service between the county and in June it'll be 37 years.
They're going to crumble when you leave.
Well,
Crumble down.
it's like what, I do day shifts and night shifts, and the overtime. Is a two-sided thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're happy when you get your paycheck. You look at it and you go, all right. But at the same time, I'm 63 years old. I can't do this anymore.
Right.
I can't take these long hours. And, and I tell everybody, anybody that'll listen, I'm tired all the time. I'm not trying to pretend here anymore.
Right.
That I'm, if I was still 53,
Right.
10 years younger, I'd play this out and stay, but it's like, listen, what am I going to get out of staying longer? Obviously, you're going to get more money at the end, but less time to enjoy it. And the focus back is like, I remember my wife didn't get that joy. She didn't, and that plays a part in my mind.
Sure.
It's like, listen, what did she get out of it? She got to retire, and she passed away a year later. So she got to never enjoy her retirement because she was sick the whole time. She was already sick at her retirement party. She just didn't know it, and then got diagnosed a month later.
So good for you. You come to the resolve that you could put it down. Some guys retire and then they have to do something else.
Right.
The next
Now,
day.
I don't want to stop working. I wouldn't mind, still doing something. But I just, getting up at 4:30 in the morning and then having to deal with the traffic because, 90% of my stress is coming to work and going to work.
Right.
We could go to work and I'd be on the radio in Brooklyn and we could have 5 fires. Piece of cake. We'll handle this. We'll get it done. Oh, and then now I got to sit and sit in standstill traffic on the LIE to BQE coming home. And Laura's son does the same thing. He's with the Marine unit in the NYPD. And he has almost the same path coming home that I do.
And you can't take a train. You can't take.
No, I can't.
Yeah.
Because if you get stuck doing overtime, especially on the weekends, there's no overnight trains on the weekends coming out of Atlantic Terminal, which is literally right down the block. I mean, you could walk if you wanted to. It really wouldn't be that bad. But the only thing is, if you get off at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday morning, there's no trains.
Right.
They're not coming out of Atlantic Terminal. You would have to get a subway back to Penn Station and then probably wait an hour.
Yeah, right.
So
So the traffic is always part of your day.
Right. And then, you get those 1 or 2 days, like New Year's Eve, I had to go into work. And I left at 11 o'clock, and the roads were empty because being New Year's Eve, everybody's where they're going to be for the revelry. So I got to work in 40 minutes. I loved it. Honestly. And then when I came home that day, I got home in the same time because everybody stayed home and relaxed and kind of was like vegged out, if you will.
Right.
And you get those days but they're few and far between.
Oh, sure.
You know.
Well, I hope you do finally leave and enjoy.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, I've known you 40 years. Since the
Right.
day we got in the fire department
Yeah.
together, and so I still bump into you here and there,
Right.
and in town, and it's a friendship that will go another 40 years.
Exactly, and that's the joy of it.
Right.
Is
I was
that-
telling Lori, when I inquired about joining, I called the district house. And I don't know if you remember, but in 1989, you happened to have been working, and you picked up the phone.
Are
And
you
I-
kidding?
And I said, I want to join, but I don't want to go to fires. I just want to work on the ambulance. And you said, well, we have this new fire medic program happening. That might be
You
what
remember
you're looking
that?
for. Yes. And I remember you steered me to call Johnny Ferraro.
Yes, oh my God.
And you said, call him because he's
One of the
captain
funniest
rescue.
guys I ever met in my entire life.
Yeah, Johnny was good.
Oh my
Johnny
God.
was good.
He could tell a story and have you in tears.
Oh, and he was a prankster.
Yes.
He, with all seriousness in his face,
Yep.
he could just set you up.
But oh my
Yes.
God, was he funny?
Yeah.
You know.
Him and his brother Pat.
Now he's still around, right, Johnny?
No, Johnny
No, Johnny
passed.
passed
Oh,
away,
did he?
and Patty passed. Johnny passed away about 6-7 years ago.
Oh my God, I'm
and
so
then,
hurt.
and young, like 67 maybe.
Right.
And then Patty died last year
Right.
of cancer.
And Billy passed away young too.
Billy was 58, tied for 22 months.
Right.
Yeah.
See, that's that's part of the influence in me making up my mind to
Listen,
leave. It's like,
but 2 weeks.
why am I going to wait around for more money?
That's right.
2 weeks before Billy passed away, he sat in our kitchen
Right.
telling me about a cruise he booked. He's going to China. And it's next June. I booked this whole big cruise. We're going and we're doing. And 2 weeks later, it was his funeral.
Yeah, that's how fast it happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, in moving forward, I mean, this beautiful lady on my right has been an amazing part of my life for the last couple of years.
We're speaking of Lori.
Yes. And she has just been wonderful. And I tell her all the time she's the best, and she is,
Yes.
All right.
So-
listen, I appreciate you taking some time to come over and talk.
Oh, thank you
And I
for
think-
having me. I
think
mean,
you
this
get,
is,
you get
I
the
mean, we
gist
could,
of,
this could
yeah,
go
this-
on for hours.
Yeah, we could be here till the
And then
sun's
there's some stories we can't tell.
up. Shut the mics. We'll go over there.
But all of it's a lifelong journey. Some of it bad, most of it good. And it's been an incredible ride.
Yeah.
It really has. And
we just think it's-
I consider myself lucky to been part of it.
I think it's important that people hear.
Right.
Like I said to Freddie, 50 years from now, I want somebody to listen to this and say,
Right.
those guys had a ball, man, back
Yeah.
then.
But I mean, I transitioned from, as I got older, with the tournament team, and then you can't do that anymore. But the one thing that never waned is my love of going to fires. That has not diminished whatsoever. I know physically now that I'm good. If I go, I'm glad that I'm the chief of the department, and I can stand out in the street and tell guys, hey, you do this, you do that, and blah, 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 blah. But, where I used to be the young guy and could, go like a bat out of hell in a fire, now it's like, hey, listen, you're going to get 10 minutes out of me, and that's about it.
You know what? As chief, having all these years under your belt, do you look at the new guys and say, "Oh, these minnows"?
Well, I mean,
what are they in for?
Well, I think about that a little bit, but at the same time, the older guys in the department, when Willie and I first joined, they were the same way. They looked at us like these kids have no idea,
Right.
But I remember being at a parade one time in Hicksville, and we were on our way up there for the Labor Day parade, and Charlie Fortin was the chief, and he said, Cap called me in the office. He said, listen, at the time, that block party at the Labor Day parade was legendary. I mean, absolutely legendary. Countywide, it's Nassau and Suffolk, the stories that be told at that block party are absolutely amazing. So anyway, Charlie said, the parade begins at 5 o'clock on a Sunday, not Saturday. So he said, Cap, listen, I don't want you staying at the block party. You can have a half hour or whatever, and then I want you to come back. All right, I'm not going to, ignore the chief of the department. He has a request. So I go back to the firehouse, and I told the guys, I said, listen, I want you here. Parade begins at 5 o'clock. We're in the back of the parade. We're all the way in the last division, so we're not stepping off until like 6:30, 6:45, right? So I said, I want everybody here 2 o'clock on the dot, Class A uniform, ready to go. Like 2 o'clock. So I said, Don't worry about it. So we get to the firehouse, and everybody's there. We're getting on the trucks, and we're leaving. So Ronnie Hoffman pulls me aside, and he says, Cap, he goes, what's with it? He goes, why are we leaving at 2 o'clock? I said, the chief of the department said we couldn't stay. We couldn't stay beyond after the parade was over. He didn't say anything about stopping anywhere on the way there. So lo and behold, Eddie Bedell and Gary Bedell go up in the chief's car. Richie was the chief of the department. And we go up, and there's a place called the Gateway Tavern. It's still there. Still there. Tiny little place, Gateway Tavern, and it's right on Jerusalem, right near what's the Catholic East Meadow, Hicksville borderline?
Yeah.
Holy Trinity?
Holy Trinity.
Holy
yes.
Trinity. Right. So anyway, it's a little tucked away place. So we know about it. So anyway, we go in there. Now it's 2:30 and we're in there. Parade doesn't begin at 5 o'clock. We start doing this, right? We're lifting them. So we were able to converse. We didn't have cell phones, but the portable radios could work, and I could talk to Gary and Eddie Bedell at the parade start, because we're only like a half a mile from Hicksville. So we're sitting there. They're going, "Where are you? Where are you?" Now it's like 5:30, 6 o'clock. We've been in the gateway for 3 hours now. And he goes, "Where are you?" We said, "Oh, we're headed north." We were headed north, all right. We were flying high. We weren't on the fire truck or anything. So we show up. We show up finally about 6 o'clock, 6:15. We're 3 sheets to the wind, right? So Eddie Bedell looks at me. He's as red as that Solo cup. He is madder than a wet hen. So he sits there and goes, "Cap, you ready?" "Yeah, we're ready." He goes, "Okay, you got chalk, you got tape measure for, lining up the banner with the color guard and the flag." So I look over, and there's my buddy Bones, the chief of East Rockaway, Bobby. And I walked over to the chief's guy. I said, "Bobby, you got tape and chalk?" He goes, "Yeah, sure. Here you go, Billy." So we line up the whole thing. We measure it out. And then we're only marching as a drill team. Nothing much. So there's only 12, 15 of us. Okay, fine. So the only ones sober are Gary and Eddie Bedell. Eddie won't talk to me. So we get it ready. We all get dressed. Time to step off. We step off. March, get the whole thing done, right? We had one guy stay behind. Gary Bedell stayed behind. We all left and came back to town and went to Billy Telford's house. We were all having a great time there when in walks Gary Bedell. First place, best appearing drill team. Eddie Bedell was so mad at me. He was like, he couldn't believe we won. He smiles. And to this day, there's a picture in the firehouse, all of us in Billy Telford's basement with that trophy, and Booney Smith and all of them. We're all, and then but he wouldn't talk to me for a couple of weeks. And then finally he says, he goes, you happy with yourself? I said, yeah. I said, I said, we had to produce, and we did. He goes, so you just thought you could show up drunk and march in this parade and you'd be ready? Yeah. And I said, yeah. He goes, where did you learn that? I go, from you. I said, all you older guys taught me how to do this. Yeah. And that was it. He stopped being mad at me. He couldn't say a word.
And there you have the discipline of the OFD.
Yes, and that right. And that's. I said, you wanted the influence? You gave it to me.
Right.
You're the guys who taught me how to be prepared.
Right.
And regardless of my sobriety at the moment, I was ready, and we came through.
There it is.
And he stopped being mad. He had nothing to say. It was so funny.
Well, thank you, Chief Bill Wade.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was a ball.
Okay, we'll have, and like good. We say this to every guest. We'll do a part 2.
Yeah, I'd be willing to come back. Loving it.
Thanks for joining us on the Firehouse Chronicles, where we document history. I'm so glad you were able to be with us, and please stay tuned for the next episode coming up. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Firehouse Chronicles. Once again, a special thanks to Chief Bill Wade for taking the time to help us document history. Please be sure to tap those like and subscribe buttons so that you don't miss out. We hope you enjoyed listening in, and we hope to catch you back on the next episode. Until then, stay safe.